So the next group of vocabulary words we're going to talk about, frequency, period. Okay? When we talk about frequency, we're talking about the number of complete cycles or waves, in a sense, that happens in a given amount of time, typically a second. So looking at this graph, and remember we were talking about position and time, if, let's say, well, let's first talk about what it means to be a complete wave or a complete cycle. So if I were to start here, I'm looking for the point where we return back to the original position, its original shape, okay? So, or I should say not original position, as original values. If I start here and I go here, it looks like I've returned back. But the truth of the matter is I haven't. If I look at the wave, at this point, the wave is pointing down. It's heading down. At this point, the wave is heading up. So we're looking for not only a point on the equilibrium, but a point on the equilibrium where the wave is doing the exact same thing. So if I'm talking about a wave going up and at equilibrium, I can't be talking about this point because it's going down. I continue to go, and right here I have a point on the equilibrium, and it's pointing up. Okay? So this point from here to here is representing a complete cycle. Now we can accomplish that with other points too. If I take this point per se, once again I'm hitting this position, but my wave is going up here, going down here, so it doesn't quite qualify. Continue to go, happens right here. It's at the same position and is heading up. Okay? Or peak to peak, which is another term we haven't talked about. We're at this point back to its original point. Okay? Usually measuring the tops of the waves for cycles is the best way to do it. Okay? Cool? So that's frequency. It's the measurement of the number of waves that happen in a second, typically. Now, looking at this graph, we can say, well, if this is 1 second, then I can say that my frequency is 1. It actually is 1 cycle per second. If it was here, it turns out to be 1.5. If it's here, it's a half. If it's here, it's a quarter. So all of those will have frequencies. If it takes 1 second to get here, then you only experience a fourth of a wave in a given second. Now, frequency is cycles per second. It's also referred to as a hertz. A hertz is a measurement of frequency, which is referring to the number of cycles per second. Now, cycles doesn't have a unit to it. I kind of use the word cycle as a placeholder. So it's actually a hertz is 1 over a second, or a per second. That's a hertz. That's a frequency. Okay? Period is the exact same thing, only opposite. Okay? So period is the amount of time it takes for 1 cycle to happen. So when we talk about a period, we're talking about a period of time. A second, typically in seconds. So looking over this graph, if I hit here, okay, in 1 second, so how long is it going to take to get 1 complete cycle? Well, if this is 1 second, then it would seem to here would be 2 seconds. So the period of this wave would be 2 seconds. If it was here in a second, then the period of the wave would be 4 seconds. So, talking about this point, we said that the frequency, I'm going to abbreviate it, the frequency is 1/4 hertz, okay, which is 1/4 of a cycle per second. Now, at that point I said the period is 4 seconds, which means it takes 4 seconds for one complete wave. Okay? So if you look at this mathematically, there's kind of a relationship here. So we said that this is 1/4 of a frequency, for 1/4 of a wave, or 1/4 of a cycle per second. And the period, if that took 1 second, let's make sure we say that, 1 second, the period at that point was going to be 4 seconds, because it was going to take 4 more seconds for a complete wave. Now, if I said instead this point right here, it takes 1 second, what's the frequency? Okay? Well, it's half of a wave, so I get a half of a cycle per second, so my frequency at that point would be 1/2 a hertz, or 0.5. Now, talking about period, well, how many seconds would it take it for it to complete a cycle? I got half of a cycle in a second, so it's going to take me 2 seconds to complete it. So at that point, it's 2 seconds is my period. Now, those of you who consider themselves pretty proficient with mathematics, what's the relationship here between frequency and period?